So I interviewed a longtime colleague and who has taken several online classes over the course of many years. She has taken asynchronous courses, that she's also taken hybrid classes, and most recently Zoom classes. And she said one of the best things about online classes is the flexibilities, because going in person to a class, there are a lot of components. Not only do you have to drive and find parking, sometimes the times are not convenient. And so being in an online class can allow for the flexibility of taking the class from anywhere. Now, one of the challenges, as we've seen in this in particular class, is the being able to actually replicate the experience of being in class with other people, right? So that was one of the challenges that she had said. So sometimes it can be sort of difficult to, mimic conversations that you would have in class, because there's something to be said about being like next to people, sitting next to people, sitting across from people, having that face-to-face human interaction. So the even though the instructors, she, reflected on that even though instructors attempt to make the connections, sometimes it can be challenging. So pre-pandemic, Benines talks about the professors having to go around in a circle on the screen, try to sort of coax out conversations with from students. But there's also these breakout rooms now, where large class sizes can go into breakout rooms, and so sometimes she would notice that professors do try to integrate and solicit or elicit conversation from the students. Other times you'll have instructors that sort of process observe those things, but when it's asynchronous, it can be challenging to sort of establish or create sort of that community, especially when students are logging on their own time because of that flexibility. So um one of the things that she had sort of noted in the conversations within the synchronous classes was the sort of ability to facilitate conversations with many people. So she talked about allowing individuals to sort of pitch in, and maybe asking for others who hadn't necessarily added to the conversation. Now, one of the challenges that she had said, with regards to, the asynchronous classes, is the, only reading and doing some of the assignments. And she also said that when she was, earning her library credential, that didn't really matter. Like, she wasn't necessarily there, in class to make friends, or to sort of find that sort of that human connection in class, because it was sort of like her just wanting to get the content and then leave. But when she was taking classes for like enrichment and curiosity and the overall intellectual development, there was sort of a desire to be in classes where there was conversation. And so that part is something that she says can be more cohesive in terms of creating that community. Now, her and I had the conversation about the technology, because for me, I'm realizing that there's a lot of technology out there, like this platform. Even though it looks very similar to Canva, there's a little bit of a difference. So I think, having to know the technology well enough so that if we have students who are not necessarily tech savvy, because, the class age range runs the gamut, right? So you have very early new students in college, and then people that haven't been in college for many, many years and are, just jumping back in. So one of the things that she had noticed is that some of the instructors in the past have tried to use class discussion boards and so on to create that connection. One of the best things about online classes that Benin was talking about was the equity, because having asynchronous courses, having sort of the option of taking a class online allows for people to take the classes who may not have the opportunity, the means, the access to get to campus. And so it creates that sort of equity component of higher education. And then the other thing that she mentioned, which I thought was really interesting, because I really hadn't thought about this part before, but when we're talking about advice, she really wanted to sort of have people think about the persona that we put online. What does our voice say about who we are as instructors, how we sort of come across on the camera or on in the conversations? says a lot, right? Within that sort of online learning experience. And so, she encourages people to sort of, use their name while they're speaking in videos or in audio, creating sort of these warm-ups for people to start or to think about the conversations at the beginning of the modules. Um, so those are some of the components that she, wanted to share in terms of advice. But there were little things that she also said. She says she tries to use people's names when she's providing feedback to students. Oftentimes if the class is not on Zoom, like her feedback will be an audio clip that she will post for the students. And one of the things that she also said for students in the class is to remind the students that this is the classroom. However it is sort of formulated is really the container, and to encourage, emojis in chat and discussions. And so we want, as instructors, as online instructors, we really want to make the content interesting enough so that people want to pay attention and want to participate, and encouraging that as a way of sharing or partaking in knowledge. Um, and so the final thing she wanted to sort of emphasize is to acknowledge that Zoom or online learning is not the same as being in class. And so let's not pretend that it is the same thing. But at the same time, there is a lot of goodness that can come with being in this online class, and having the sort of the access to the learning and the knowledge. And so we want to take that and create this overall positive learning experience.